You saw it in the headlines.
He walked in front of the truck on purpose.
Chris Spaeth now has to live the rest of his life without his son, Casey.
Say hi.
Hi.
For Dad.
Hi, Dad.
He was a model role student, and we had no issues. He was top of his class, never in trouble. Probably the best kid that you could ever ask for, and there were no signs of any trouble ever in his life. It just snapped one day. He tried to cure his problems by testing out and using drugs and mind-altering drugs to try to help calm his mind, because he couldn't calm his mind.
Diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolarism 1 year ago, Casey fought a mental battle he would never overcome.
Yeah, he started taking his medications regularly, but he didn't like his medications because they numbed him and took his feelings away from him.
Casey ended up dropping out of college. The drugs he took to relieve the symptoms of his illnesses wouldn't allow him to concentrate or pass his classes. After moving back home, Casey got a job working nights at Hy-Vee. He had good days and bad.
We worked at Hy-Vee, the grocery store, and they knew that all of a sudden in the last week there were issues he was having, but they didn't know who to talk to.
A shortage of doctors and counselors in the area left Casey feeling numb, alone, and isolated in his thoughts.
Yeah, our mental health system here is really broken. We've made a lot of laws, and the communications between the doctors and the families and the people that really care for the people isn't happening. So there's not enough doctors here. To be able to have to see a doctor via video from Florida here in Iowa is just a horrible thing. It would be almost impossible to diagnose and treat somebody via video because there's not enough doctors.
The stigma of mental illness in our society has been swept under the rug for so long, leaving people like Casey feeling trapped.
So many people that want to feel that people care for them, and yet we just shove them to a hospital, and from the hospital they take them to another hospital, and then they go to the police department. It's almost like a circle they keep going in, and they never fully get treated on really what the problems are. And I believe even today that Casey could still be alive if we really talked about his illness and what he had.
Chris unlocked this final goodbye note on Casey's phone shortly after he died.
It says, "For over the past year, I've been court ordered to get a shot of medicine. What this shot does is it blocks the brain from producing dopamine. As most people know, dopamine is what gives someone pleasure. So this drug essentially blocks you from enjoying life and from living in the moment. I've been living with little to no pleasure. I don't enjoy anything, and I can't put my heart into anything I do. I feel as if my soul has been ripped out into pieces and destroyed my will to live."
A life without Casey has compelled Chris to keep fighting and advocating to combat the stigma that's so negatively associated with mental health issues. But he also feels torn that it has to come to death for action to be taken seriously.
Everybody is crying for more information on how to deal with mental illness. There's a lot of people that have it that won't talk about it. The stigma of it is really a big thing, and everybody's afraid to talk about it.
Although what Casey dealt with was genetically predisposed.
I've had my wife and my son across from the hospital from each other in Sioux City at the same time with the same diagnosis. So coming to reality of what this disease is and how powerful it is and what it takes to cure and help people through it is a big deal, and we're nowhere near touching the surface of it.
Chris knows there is something we can all do to help.
If we could do any one thing is to get more support for this, for the mental health groups in the United States. I think we would just be miles ahead further in where we're at today.
In Spirit Lake, Jamie Perez, KCAU 9 News.